All right, guys, I think we're live. Can you see me? Can you hear me? All right, I gotta find the chat. Hang on, technical difficulties. Let's see. Uh-huh. Guys, I can't find the chat. This is crazy. Okay, I think I found it. Okay. All right, so we got at least one person watching. It says two. All right, so guys, if you can see me, if you can hear me, say something in the chat. I just want to see that I'm looking in the correct place. Just say hi, anything. All right. Getting used to this whole streaming thing, so of course we're going to have technical difficulties. All right, well anyways. All right, what we're doing today is talking about Bitcoin, right? So just a Q&A. Anything you guys want to know, you can ask me questions about how it works, why it's important, anything like that. I compiled a list of questions that I've gotten from people over the last couple weeks. So yeah, that's the plan, is to go through them. All right, so most importantly, right, I'm getting this one actually more and more. So a friend of mine just said to me the other day, he said, okay, I don't own any Bitcoin, and it honestly doesn't seem worth my time to understand it. Can you tell me why you think Bitcoin is such a big deal and why I should learn about it? Yeah, I mean, I'll do my best, but ultimately, it's up to every person whether they think it's a good investment of their time and their energy to understand Bitcoin or not. There's a quote by someone in the space who said, everyone buys Bitcoin at the price they deserve. And that's profound. I think that's true of a lot of things, and Bitcoin's a great example. So why is Bitcoin worth your time? Well, I can give you several answers, and the answer I would give sort of depends on each particular person and their worldview. So I wouldn't give the same blanket answer to everyone. But let me do it here anyways. So the first thing is, I think Bitcoin is not going away. It's very hard to imagine a scenario in which it disappears, in which it's killed off, if it's replaced by a better version. It's very difficult to imagine that once you understand what Bitcoin is, why it was created, its different properties, how it has evolved over time, how different monetary systems have evolved over time, and so on. It's knowing all that, it's very, very difficult to imagine a situation in which Bitcoin no longer exists. Right, especially 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. If we talk about 100 years from now, yeah, I could imagine a lot of scenarios that kill off Bitcoin. But in the next 5, 10, 20 years, it's very difficult to imagine. And so given that it is going to be around, and given that it is probably going to be adopted more and more, that will tend to cause its price to go up, measured in dollars. And again, if you understand what Bitcoin is, you would probably tend to believe that a growing number of people are going to start using it. And those who are latest to adopt it are going to pay the heaviest price for adopting it. So yeah, that's dollars. If you're going to buy Bitcoin, sure, it's going to cost more dollars for you to get in, but that's a really like Ponzi scheme sounding argument, right? It's just like whoever gets in gets the greatest benefit. And I understand that, and Bitcoin's definitely not a Ponzi scheme. I could elaborate on that if anyone's curious. The reason I think everyone is ultimately going to own some Bitcoin is simply because it is a better technology. It would be like if I said to you when the internet was invented, hey, this is a really good technology for communication and for many other things. Everyone is eventually going to use the internet. And those who adopt it latest are going to pay the heaviest price. They're going to be behind. They're not going to understand it. They're still going to have to go through the same learning process. They're just going to be further behind. They're not going to be able to leverage those tools to their advantage compared to the people who adopt it sooner and learn about it sooner. And Bitcoin is the exact same way. So I would almost say that as we think about Bitcoin and why it's worth your time, it makes more sense to compare it to a technology like the internet than to compare it to a financial asset like stocks or real estate or anything that you would buy and sell in terms of dollars. So it's not about buying it cheaply, a small number of dollars, and then selling it for more. That's not the point of Bitcoin. It's not the point at all. That just tends to be the way people are adopting it right now, is by paying fiat money for the Bitcoin. In the future, it's not going to be that way. And there will come a time where there is no amount of fiat that you would accept to give up your Bitcoin. That's going to happen. And the reason that's going to happen is because Bitcoin is such a superior form of money. It's such a superior store of value that you are going to want a lot of value in return in order for you to part with your Bitcoin. And pieces of paper, I don't have an example of a physical dollar here, but physical pieces of paper are intrinsically worthless. Like there is no intrinsic value to them. There's no intrinsic property. They're just, they're really get out of jail free cards, but they're not free to acquire, right? That's really what a dollar is. It's just like if you give it back to the government at the end of the year, they don't put you in jail. That's really the only thing it's good for. It's not actually a store of value. So anyways, getting back to the question, why should you take the time to learn about Bitcoin? Because you're going to have to do it eventually. You're going to have to do it eventually. And if you're not educated on what Bitcoin is and what it isn't, and you adopt it before you understand it, either because of fear of missing out or because, all your friends are adopting it and you're the last one, or you see the price going up and you somehow want to get in on the action, although that's the wrong way to think about it. If you jump into Bitcoin before you understand it, you're going to get burned. You're going to lose your Bitcoins. They'll be stolen from you. It's just like if you walk down the street like holding a giant wad of cash, someone will mug you. I mean, maybe not the first person you see, but eventually, right, if you just have all this, money sitting out there, someone will take it from you. And if you have bad security practices, right, in dollars, that's what happens. And if you have bad security practices in Bitcoin, that's what happens digitally. People will take your Bitcoins if you don't store them the right way. And it takes education to figure out the right way to store them. So you're going to have to learn about it one way or another. And knowledge is power, right? Knowledge is power. And anything you know and anything you don't know benefit or suffer from compound interest, right? As Albert Einstein may or may not have actually said, compound interest is the most powerful force in the universe. And you want that compound interest working in your favor. You don't want that compound interest working against you. And so there are two major things in regards to Bitcoin and compound interest that are very important to think about. The first of which is knowledge, as I said. The sooner you learn about Bitcoin, the sooner you can start taking advantage of that technology to make yourself and your family more prosperous. That's one. The other part of the compound interest is that as soon as you learn about Bitcoin and fiat, you realize that compound interest is working against you in fiat. Every day that you own a dollar is a day that the government is taking value from you via inflation. It is leaking value on a minute-to-minute basis out of every dollar or any fiat currency that you hold. It is a terrible investment. And whether you choose to acknowledge it or not, whether you choose to think about it or not, if you're holding dollars or euros or yen or whatever, you're investing in the dollar, right? You do something for somebody, right? A boss, an employer, a customer, whatever. You do something to make income, okay? So you exerted your energy to do something nice for somebody. Wonderful. And they give you back a token of your energy, of the value you provided them. Now, in America, we're used to accepting dollars, right? We just accept dollars in exchange for our efforts. You don't have to keep those dollars. I mean, you could keep them in your pocket, keep them in your bank account, and then spend them when you feel like it. Or you can convert those dollars into something else that will store your energy better. You can convert those dollars into something that will multiply your energy just by sitting in your pocket. To me, that makes way more sense. And examples of things that store energy better are things that can't be printed. Like I printed a sheet of paper, right? Just like you can print $1, right? So I wouldn't go to work for somebody all day long and then say, give me a bunch of sheets of paper. I mean like actual sheets of paper, like a ream of paper, 8.5 by 11. I wouldn't say, give me a ream of paper, because there's no value there. We can create more sheets of paper very, very easily, and obviously, we can print things on them very easily. So if you can create something very, very easily, it's not valuable. That's true of $1. $1 can be created way too easily. It's just not valuable. And so I wouldn't want to accept dollars for my labor. They're too easy to create. We create, I don't even know how. I've done the math many times before. I mean, it's millions of dollars a day. It might be billions, actually, now that I think about it, 365 days in a year. Yeah, did we create $1 trillion already in 2020? Yeah, so it's something crazy. Well, anyways, it's way too easy to create $1, so I don't want to store my value in something that can be created so easily. And what's nice about Bitcoin and gold and most other things, even real estate, is that you can't just snap your fingers and create those things, right? You have to work to create those things. So hopefully I answered the question. Why is it worth learning about Bitcoin? It takes a lot of time to learn about Bitcoin. Let's put it that way. And so you should start early, and you're going to have to do it eventually. And you want the compound interest working in your favor. And that includes the compound interest of knowledge, right? You're going to have a huge advantage over other people if you actually understand what Bitcoin is. And it also includes your energy, which is really what prosperity is, right? It's your economic energy. So, yeah, I guess if that doesn't convince you, actually, you know what? I have one other thing. I know it's a lot of time on one question, but I think it's the most important one. So, another thing, if that argument doesn't really make sense to you, or it seems a little bit abstract, I'll go back to an argument that it's not my favorite argument, but it might make sense to you if you're new to the space, if you haven't thought about money and value and so forth, and you're still used to measuring value in dollars. If you're still used to measuring value in dollars and you still want to have more dollars, I'll present an argument to you that's a dollar-based argument. I don't think it's a very strong one. I think the other ones are better, but I'll present it nonetheless. Okay, so for whatever reason, I mean, fortunately or whatever, I bought Bitcoin a long time ago, 5-6 years ago, and I've been, buying it and selling it for different reasons ever since. I haven't really worked a job in the last 2.5 years. And part of the reason is how Bitcoin has changed my view of the world. And I no longer think that it's necessary to work every single day. It feels very unnatural to me. And so part of it is a mindset shift. Part of it is an emotional shift. So psychological, emotional, and it's also financial. So this is kind of like the main point. If you can acquire $50,000 worth of Bitcoin, $50,000 worth of Bitcoin. So that's like 2 Bitcoins right now. Maybe 2 point a little bit, because the price is almost $25,000 a coin. If you can acquire 2 Bitcoins and just hold them, they will double in price faster than once a year. Faster. So let's just say it doubles every year on average. Of course, there are a lot of years where it goes down, but then it makes up for it by going 10x in a year and so forth. So if you can acquire $50,000 worth of Bitcoin and just wait for the long term, 5 years, 10 years, on average, it will double every year. So that means if you start with $50,000 worth of Bitcoin, you'll add $50,000 worth of Bitcoin just by holding those Bitcoins in a year. So your income, if you will, from holding those Bitcoins will be $50,000. And it doesn't take energy to hold the Bitcoins, right? I mean, you just don't touch them. You just leave them there. So it's not like you have to work 40 hours a week for 50 weeks a year in order to keep your Bitcoins. You might have to work to save the money to buy the Bitcoins, but then once you have them, you just leave them there. And so this is what I've been doing, is essentially generating an income from Bitcoin in a dollar sense without working. So when I pay my rent and I buy groceries and so forth, I just sell a tiny bit of Bitcoin, a tiny bit, like $1,000 worth, right, in a month. And then I pay this, or probably $2,000 total. And I live as cheaply as I can, and I enjoy it. And my Bitcoin balance in terms of dollars keeps going up and up and up. And that's without working. And so then I have 40 hours a week, or, all the hours of the day to do whatever I want. And I enjoy learning more about Bitcoin. I enjoy teaching it, YouTube channel and so forth, but you might do something different. Maybe you could start painting or something, whatever's interesting to you. So it's really a you could quit your job situation. And I don't feel stressed about it. It feels like the way life should be. And that opportunity of Bitcoin doubling is going to go away fairly soon. I mean, it might only last another 5 years, except I think we're going to get a lot of doublings in the year 2021. So, yeah, I mean, that's really the best argument I can give you, is that pretty much every aspect of your life would be better, every aspect of your family's life, every aspect of your community's life, and the cost of not doing it is humongous, really, really high price to pay if you don't learn about it. So, okay, next question. So, $23,000 per coin seems really expensive. Is it too late to get in? Okay, that's a common question. It seems like the ship has sailed already. And I touched on this a little bit in the previous answer. I don't think it's ever too late to get in because of what I said earlier. There will come a time where we don't measure Bitcoins as a price in dollars. There will come a time where we just don't care about the price of Bitcoins in dollars. You'll just say, like, how many Bitcoins do you own? You'll start measuring your own wealth in terms of Bitcoin. You'll be like, okay, I own whatever, 12 Bitcoin, that's my worth. Or I own 0.5 Bitcoin, that's my net worth. There will come a time. It's very hard to imagine that. But what I spend my time doing, now that I don't work a job, is I study old books and trends and monetary history and adoption curves of different things. And it seems to me like it's inevitable. It's just one person at a time, one company at a time, one country at a time. And I don't know exactly, what day, you'll adopt Bitcoin, or, the government of South Africa will adopt it. I mean, I don't know that stuff. But it will be some country, it will be some government, it will be some company, it will be some person, little by little. And I think it is very plausible that Bitcoin outlasts every fiat currency on the planet. And here's why. The average lifespan of a fiat currency is less than 30 years. And if you don't know what I mean by fiat currency, I mean currencies that the government just says, this is money, right? It's basically the same thing that Parker Brothers did when they created Monopoly, right? And they have Monopoly money. And you've got the 1s, the 5s, the 10s, and so on. They basically just said, this is the money for the game. And then you have to use it. And outside of the game, it doesn't really have value, right? You don't take Monopoly money to the actual grocery store to buy groceries, right? And the same thing is true of government currencies like the US dollar. It's fiat. It's just the government that says this is what we're using for money when we play this game, right? The United States income tax game. Outside of that, it doesn't have value. It just doesn't. And it's only a matter of time before each of these paper currencies return to their intrinsic value, which is the same as monopoly money. So it's so funny because I've been thinking this way for years, but imagine if you were to like take a new job and negotiate your salary and your boss insisted on paying you in actual monopoly money. Okay, we're going to give you actual monopoly money. We're prepared to pay you $80,000 a year. Do you say, okay, it sounds good, or do you negotiate, or do you say, it better be 85? Yeah, 85 seems more like, you know, the industry standard. Or do you say that's ridiculous? In my mind, it's ridiculous. Even 80,000 US dollars, to me, it's the same. It's the same as monopoly money. It's just that people don't know it yet. It's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time. And I have no idea if it's going to be tomorrow or 100 years from now, and I don't care. The point is it's inevitable, and I don't want to try to time the market. So I'm out. I'm out of the dollar. I don't like accepting it for my time. I don't like holding it in my bank account. You know, it's in my mind very terrible. So is $20,000 per Bitcoin too expensive or too late to get in? If someone is willing to take fiat from you for any amount of Bitcoin, it's not too late. So I don't know if it's like necessarily a good deal or not for you, but I don't think it's ever too late. Yeah, so I think that answers it. All right, number 3. What happens if Bitcoin gets banned by the U.S. government? Or really any other governments, I guess. Is a Biden administration going to be good or bad for the price of Bitcoin? What about a Trump administration if he somehow stays in office? Yeah, good question. Okay. I think that very much of what happens in the news or just day to day, I mean, I guess like who the president is it really the news? I mean, current events maybe. I think a lot of that is just noise. I think the overall trend of where things are going is a foregone conclusion, and the exact, you know, company or country or person who is president, I think all those things, they feel very important in the moment, but when you zoom out and look at a 50-year or 100-year period, you know, in terms of the story of Bitcoin, none of that is really relevant. And it's really hard to take that viewpoint, but part of the irony of Bitcoin is that once you understand Bitcoin, once you've sort of like shifted your thinking to like a Bitcoin way of thinking, you do start thinking about the long term way more. Way more. You don't really worry about like, oh, this week this, or today this, or what was the news today, or it just really doesn't matter. It just really doesn't matter. It's all noise. So I think I mean, okay, I don't know if Trump is actually going to find a way to stay in office. But if he does, then that will be some kind of like catastrophic event for the United States, because it will either mean uncovering a bunch of cheating, like in a sort of like legitimate way, like legitimately uncovering the cheating, either through the courts or whatever, or which would be catastrophic, obviously, or it would be some kind of coup, like illegally holding power, seizing power, like, you know, like defending the White House or something, using the military, I don't know. And that would obviously be catastrophic in a very different way. So that would be catastrophic for like America, and I think that would actually be bullish for Bitcoin in the short term, but it doesn't really matter in the long term, in my opinion. And Biden, you know, I think it will be bullish. I think it'll be good for the price of Bitcoin, because almost everything is good for the price of Bitcoin. Like Biden represents continuity. like continuity, more of the same. Not the same as Trump. Trump was sort of like he was the same in a lot of ways. Yeah. But Biden is more like Obama was, and Obama actually was kind of like Bush in a lot of ways, and Bush was like Clinton, Bill, and also Hillary would have been the same. So yeah, I mean, like, if anything, 4 years of Trump was kind of like the weird thing, but in terms of a fiscal thing, like an economic thing, and more directly Bitcoin thing, Trump was more of the same. So I think it's just the same. It's all noise from the viewpoint of Bitcoin. Okay, so what happens if Bitcoin gets banned? I think it would be really hard to ban Bitcoin, to just outright ban it and say it's not allowed. Like, you can't own it if you're a U.S. citizen. It seems very, very unlikely. And I think if we look at previous efforts by the U.S. government to ban things like alcohol or gold, right? A lot of people don't know there was a 31-year period from 1934 to 1965 where Americans were not allowed to own gold. That's crazy. But research that I've found other people do kind of indicates that most U.S. citizens kind of ignored that ban. So if they had gold in the early 1930s, they did not surrender it when it became illegal. They just sort of buried it and just didn't tell anybody. So there's a very low compliance rate. I think the same would be with Bitcoin, because it's very hard to tell if somebody has Bitcoin. You really can't tell unless they admit to having it. So I think there would be a low compliance rate. So I don't think the U.S. government would ban Bitcoin. I think what's more likely, and the direction that they're going right now, is requiring everyone on their tax return to say whether or not they've had it, whether or not they own Bitcoin, they have bought it, sold it, accepted it, sent it, blah, 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 throughout the year. And doing like much heavier KYC and AML compliance. So KYC is know your customer. So these are KYC laws, know your customer laws, and AML, anti-money laundering laws. So basically any company like a cryptocurrency exchange or a bank or any kind of financial institution has to follow increasingly strict laws to monitor all of their customers' identities and activities. So if you create an account on a cryptocurrency exchange with the intention of buying Bitcoin, you have to provide government-issued ID, like a driver's license or passport, something like that, social security number, photo ID, you take a picture with your webcam. And it's pretty strict in that sense. So I think it's going to get even stricter. So maybe I'll leave that at that. Okay, I'll say one other thing about that. So those are all centralized exchanges, centralized cryptocurrency exchanges. So basically, there's like a name to the company, and there's a headquarters and an office and a CEO and a president, blah, blah, blah. That's centralized. There are also decentralized exchanges, which are a whole different animal, and there is no centralized office. There is no central authority figure. And you can buy and sell and transact crypto on those exchanges, and there's no one to monitor you. So that's an option. It's you got to be a little bit more technical in order to use those properly. So that's something to figure out in the future. If you're new to Bitcoin, I recommend you start with a centralized exchange, go through all the formal procedures, and get started that way. That's definitely step one. All right, next question. If nobody ever spends or sells their Bitcoin, how could we build an economy like that? Are you ever going to sell or spend your Bitcoin? Another good question. Yeah, because I and many others say that Bitcoin is basically digital gold, and the primary use case is just holding it, right? That's like what you do. But I do, as I mentioned, I sell my Bitcoin for fiat and then spend the fiat. But I don't like doing that. I'd rather not spend it. So I do sell it for the purpose of spending it. That probably will continue for me. if the price of Bitcoin goes as high as I think it will in 2021, which is well over $200,000 a coin, if it does go that high, I will probably sell some of my Bitcoin with the intention of buying it back at a discount a year or two in the future. So in that way, I could potentially double my number of Bitcoins by selling it at $200,000 and then waiting a couple years and then buying it back at $100,000. So I could double the number of Bitcoins I have that way. So that's kind of my tentative plan. But if that time comes where the price is that high and I don't have conviction that it's nearing a top, I might hold it a little longer and ride it up. It's kind of hard to say. I probably should have a better plan than just winging it, but that is my plan, to be honest. So getting back to like the heart of the question, okay, what if most people, if nobody ever spends or sells their Bitcoin, how could we build an economy like that? Well, that's kind of the thing is if you, to imagine this, I don't know if it's going to be helpful or more difficult if you imagine that dollars don't exist. Like imagine that dollars don't exist. And imagine that, all the Bitcoins are out there, a couple people have like millions of Bitcoins, and then there's a lot of people who only have a fraction of a Bitcoin, like 0.0001 Bitcoin. So you have a very clear wealth disparity. Okay, so what's going to happen? Well, in any economy, you have transactions between people who are relatively rich and relatively poor. And if somebody out there has a lot of Bitcoins and they need to do things, they need to eat, sleep, they need to travel, they need to shower, they need to do all sorts of things, right? If they ever don't want to do something themselves, like if they don't want to cook dinner, they're going to go to a restaurant and pay that restaurant to cook the food and serve it to them and go get their drinks and whatever else. And that is essentially what an economy is. It's basically people specialize in different things. Like there's a cook at a restaurant, there's a server at a restaurant, there's a host or a hostess, there's all these different roles. And they all specialize so that the customers don't have to learn those skills or implement them for that given window of time. And then there's an exchange of value there, right? And all those people are there willingly, right? The customers want to be in the restaurant. It's not like the government forces them to go to that restaurant. And the servers want to be there. It's not like the government says, like, okay, you're old enough to work. It's your job to be a server at this restaurant, right? It's not mandatory. Everyone's there voluntarily, and everyone accepts the value that they get for the value they give out. So, basically, like any economy works that way. And, based on how wealthy you perceive yourself to be in any moment, you either are comfortable paying somebody to do something for you or doing it yourself. And doing it yourself probably in most cases, unless it's your particular specialty, then doing it yourself probably is going to take more effort and energy than it would take to unleash the energy that is saved in your money, if that makes sense. So for most things in the economy, like for any given person, I'm trying to think if that's true. Certainly in a first world country. Yeah, I was going to say most things you do, it's cheaper to pay someone. And then you specialize in one thing. And maybe you do that thing 40 hours a week and accumulate a bunch of money. And then you use that money to pay people to do all the other things in your life that you don't want to do yourself. Right? Like you don't grow your own tomatoes. Well, you might, but if you don't grow, you don't manufacture your own cereal, right? You just buy it at the store, right? And you don't probably milk your own cows. You go to the store and you buy the milk, right? Someone else did all that for you. So you're just paying all those other specialists to do that for you. So that's how Bitcoin will work. Whether dollars exist or not, that's how Bitcoin will work. There will always be people who perceive it to be in their best interest to unleash the energy saved in their money rather than to exert their own energy. That will always be the case. And actually, it's probably worth mentioning just one thing. Someone asked me, or we were having a discussion about like, how do you get rich? And the answer was, you find a person who is rich and you do something for him that he doesn't want to do himself. And that's exactly it. And like, it even works when like, two homeless people are involved. It's like, yeah, do something for that guy that he doesn't want to do for himself, and he'll reciprocate some kind of value. But if he doesn't have value to give you, then you didn't find a rich person to do something for. You know what I mean? So, anyways, all right, let's see. All right, if Bitcoin is just digital and not physical, then where do I store it? Yeah, it's stored digitally. Okay, good question. So obviously with like physical money, right, you put it in your pocket, your wallet, your purse, whatever you got. And same thing with physical gold, blah, blah, blah. So Bitcoin's digital. Where do you put it? The short answer is in a digital wallet. That's the short answer. So we call it a wallet because of the physical analogy. And yeah, there's many different types of wallets. But probably the most important thing to think about in this context is that everything in the Bitcoin ecosystem, everything boils down to just numbers. It's just number. Everything is just numbers. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, blah, blah, blah. Everything is just numbers because it's code. It's computer code. So you could break it down to binary. Sure, fine. Ones and zeros. But everything is just numbers. So... So the number of Bitcoins you have, obviously you have a number of Bitcoins, but each individual Bitcoin you could think of as having like a serial number, basically. Like even our dollar bills have serial numbers. So everything is just numbers. So the question is, where do you keep your numbers digitally? And there are many types of wallets. So they're just little, okay, so you can have mobile wallets on your cell phone. You can have desktop wallets on your computer. And they're basically just little software programs, just like you'd have Microsoft Word as a program on your desktop, or you'd have Snapchat as a program on your phone. You just have little programs. And all it does is keep track of your numbers. That's basically what it does. There's also special hardware devices, kind of like a USB stick, a special version of it that is not connected to the internet, that holds your numbers, right? That way you can't be attacked via the internet. You could even have paper wallets, actually. Like you could print out your numbers on a sheet of paper, right? You might encrypt the numbers, or you might convert numbers to letters. There's a lot of different ways you could do it. But you could print out your numbers on a sheet of paper and then put it in a desk drawer. So, if you think of everything related to Bitcoin as just numbers, you can put your numbers anywhere you want. Some people etch them into steel, right? Like a steel, like a license plate or something like that, and then store it in a drawer or a workshop in their garage or something. So yeah, you can store your numbers anywhere you want. You can even, of course, you can store those numbers in the physical world. That was my point with the paper and the steel and everything else. Some people even get tattoos, like on their arm, their leg, wherever, with certain numbers of theirs. Yeah, and so you can store those numbers any way you want, but you want to keep them secret, right? You don't want other people to get control of your numbers. Because in order to spend your Bitcoin, you need a particular number called your private key. So it's a really long number. It's essentially a random number. And it could be like 50 digits long, 60 digits long, like really long. You don't want to tell anybody that number. That's your private key. It's sort of like the password to your bank account, right? Which might be 8 characters, 12 characters, 14 characters, something like that, letters, numbers, symbols. Okay, Bitcoin is kind of similar, but it's just like a really long number, and you don't want anyone to find out what that number is, because if they get your number, they get your Bitcoins. All right, so that's your private key. And there's a saying in crypto, not your keys, not your coins. So you don't want to give anybody that secret number. So Bitcoin is digital, but you can store it anywhere. And if you want to know more about wallets, hardware wallets, software wallets, paper wallets, let me know. Ask in the comments. All right. Next question. If I spend my Bitcoin, how do I replenish it? Do I just buy more Bitcoins at a higher price? Okay, good question. Yeah, it's sort of whatever you want. So, yeah, well, I can tell you what I do. I mean, I mentioned it before that I do spend, I sell some of my Bitcoin so I can spend the fiat on, like, rent and groceries. And then I replenish it. Yeah, anytime I get fiat, I'm basically buying Bitcoin with it. It's not necessarily the same amount, but I do often pay a higher price. So, yeah, you can do it that way. Or you can earn Bitcoin, which is a very interesting and fascinating thing at this moment in time. In the future, it will become completely normal. So yeah, you could just earn Bitcoin. So if you're spending your Bitcoin directly, if I spend my Bitcoin, how do I replenish it? If you're spending your Bitcoin directly, whatever you're buying, right? The person on the other side of that transaction is obviously accepting Bitcoin from you. So you can think about like what you're exchanging for that Bitcoin, and maybe come up with an idea of like, oh, maybe I can sell a similar type of thing to other people and get Bitcoin from them. So yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, depending where you live and what the rules are, yeah, I mean, you could sell anything for Bitcoin. I mean, you could take professional photographs for somebody and get paid in Bitcoin. You can write a blog for somebody, get paid in Bitcoin. You can edit film and get paid in Bitcoin. I mean, you could do anything and get paid in Bitcoin. So yeah, I think earning Bitcoin is pretty powerful. It's the way of the future. I personally am interested in going down that path as soon as possible. And I think, again, because of the compound interest, I know it's inevitable, and the sooner I start, the more advantage I'll have when the economy finally goes that direction. All right. Oh, you also might get lucky and buy at a lower price, by the way. Okay, if Bitcoin is digital gold, quote unquote, and we're not supposed to spend gold or digital gold, right, because the primary use case is saving, okay, so yeah, not supposed to spend it, okay, then do we spend altcoins instead? But don't you think altcoins are bad? Okay, I see where this is coming from. So yes, I am a big believer that Bitcoin is digital gold. That's a great way to understand it. And both Bitcoin and gold are money, not currency. They're money. And the primary use case of money is to save them. That's the primary use case. However, of course, you can ultimately spend them. However, I think that altcoins, generally speaking, are currencies, just like government fiat currencies are currencies. And just like university campus cash, dining dollars, Badger bucks, whatever, those are currencies as well. Just like gift cards, if you have a gift card to Panera Bread or you have a gift card to Best Buy, whatever, those are currencies as well as Panera currency, Best Buy currency, and so forth. So there's government currencies, there's company currencies, there's board game currencies like Monopoly money, that's a currency. There's obviously cryptocurrencies. And the reason I would call all those things currencies and then Bitcoin and gold are money is because of their properties, their intrinsic properties, and that determines what they're good at, like what their specialization is. The specialization of gold and Bitcoin is saving. They're really good to save. All those other things are really good to spend. They're very good for spending. You can spend them very quickly. Most of them instantly, or practically speaking, it's instantly, like a second or two. Oftentimes there's no fees or a very, very low fee. It's very easy to move them around and spend them, right? That's the primary use case, right? You swipe a card when you go to the grocery store or, when you're on campus or whatever you're doing. And it's very fast, very cheap. So the primary use case of those is spending. So I would say yes. Spend altcoins, spend currencies, spend, anything like that. Yeah, I mean that's kind of the simple answer. But then the question is, okay, well, how did you acquire those currencies in the first place? Because aren't they bad to hold on to? And my answer is yeah. I mean, for long periods of time, sure. But the best way I would explain this is probably using an example. If you've ever traveled to a foreign country, I grew up in Buffalo, New York, just, 10 minutes from the Canadian border. So I went to Canada plenty of times. And, okay, so I get to Canada. I convert my money into Canadian currency. And then I use the Canadian currency while I'm in Canada. And then I change it back into my preferred money when I leave. That's it. So I'm only using Canadian currency for a short period of time, maybe a day, maybe 2 days, and then I'm out, right? Same thing if you go to Mexico, right? I went to Mexico. I was actually there 8 months, but so a bit longer. But it's not like I converted my entire life savings into Mexican pesos and then, watched it depreciate even faster than the dollar. No. I only converted what I needed, right? A couple hundred pesos or a couple thousand, whatever it is. And then when I leave Mexico, okay, I convert all the pesos back into dollars. So, I think like all these currencies, it's just like on campus. Like if you go to a college campus, you're not going to buy like campus cash when you're 12 years old. It just doesn't make sense, right? But once you enroll in a particular college and you show up on campus, okay, then it makes sense to get campus cash. And before you leave, whether you drop out or graduate or whatever, then you use it up. You spend it, or you find a way to like convert it. Maybe you like sell it to somebody for something else. So it only makes sense to use a currency for a short period of time, just like playing the game of Monopoly. Like you only use Monopoly money while you're playing Monopoly, and then you don't use it anymore. That's how I look at the US dollar. That's how I look at altcoins. That's how I look at all currencies. It's like I don't want the US dollar unless it's like the window of time where I'm paying taxes, right? Like that's it. Like I don't want it 365 days a year. Right, or I guess also the window of time when I'm paying rent. So it's like, and it's like less than a day. I mean, it's like a couple hours where I'll like sell some Bitcoin for some dollars, then I'll pay all my bills for the month with those dollars, and they're in my bank account like a day, And then same thing at the end of the year, or in April or whatever, I pay taxes. So I want currencies for like the smallest window of time possible. So hopefully that answers your questions about altcoins. Yeah, I would say spending the altcoins. And yeah, and even ones that are like smart contracts or ones that are going to do all these really cool things that we can't really do in the physical world. Yeah, like, I don't want to hold, I do hold Ethereum for like price appreciation, but like generally speaking, it wouldn't really make sense to hold like XRP. Like it doesn't make any sense to me to hold like in any of these coins that have like a use case for like, doing things really fast. It's like if I need to send money to the other side of the world, okay, I'll buy the XRP. Let's say I'm using XRP. I'll buy the XRP, send the money, and then I'll get out of XRP. I don't need to hold XRP for 5 years. It just doesn't make sense to me. And same thing with all these other coins. It's like if I need to do a smart contract, like for the utility of the smart contract, then okay, I'll buy whatever token I need, I'll execute the smart contract, and then I'll get out. So, yeah. So the holding period of altcoins, in my opinion, should be like really short term, and then the holding period of money, sort of by definition, right, should be longer term. Okay, let's go back. Dr. FOMO in the chat. Thank you, Dr. FOMO. The wallet contains the private and public keys. Correct. When you check your account, your private key interacts with the blockchain to see all transactions that are associated with your account. Okay, yeah. When you check your account, your private key interacts with the blockchain to see all transactions that are associated with your account. Yeah, I guess it depends how you're doing it. I don't want to confuse people, but the thing is, I don't know the level of understanding that people have who are watching this. So one thing you can do that's kind of separate than this, is even if you don't have any Bitcoin, you can go on a block explorer and type in a public key and see all the transactions that have been associated with that public key, all the sends and receives. So you can look at it for other people. So if I told you my private key, you could look at a block explorer and see all the Bitcoins that have flown into or out of that account. So that's one thing. However, if you actually have your own wallet, then yes, you can do what Dr. FOMO is saying here. You can use your private key to access your public key, and you can You can also use a single private key to create a whole family of public keys, but that might be getting too technical. So yeah, thank you for that. All right, next question. Are you worried about the volatility of Bitcoin? So presumably this means price volatility, like measured in dollars or any other fiat. Generally speaking, no, although sometimes, yeah. I mean, like, I have emotions like anybody else. So like all things considered, I would rather, the price of Bitcoin go up, right? Like it would just, I don't know, just better. But if it goes down, it's okay. And the volatility up, down, a lot, big moves in a short period of time. I guess you can look at anything in the world as like, okay, nothing is either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. I don't know if that was Abraham Lincoln or somebody else, but it's a nice quote. Nothing is either good or bad on its own. It's just your perception of it. So the way I perceive volatility is that, okay, it's scary. It's scary if I think about my wealth in terms of dollars, because, oh, I'm really rich today. Okay, I'm poor today. I'm rich today. I'm poor. That's scary. And that's what I did back in 2016, 2017, part of 2018. And as my mindset has shifted and I measure my wealth in terms of Bitcoins, right? One Bitcoin is still one Bitcoin, right? I don't care if it's worth 25,000, 15,000, 5,000, or a million. It's okay. A Bitcoin is a Bitcoin. A Bitcoin is a Bitcoin. So if my wealth was one Bitcoin today, it's one Bitcoin tomorrow. It's one Bitcoin the next day. One Bitcoin, as long as I don't, lose it to some hack. So that's one way to think about Bitcoin. But I can't help but think about it in terms of dollars a little bit because of my upbringing and the fact that I live in the United States. So at the end of the day, it is a reality that goods and services are priced in dollars. I have to pay taxes in dollars. So the amount of dollars I get for my Bitcoin is very relevant for sure. But as I think about the long term, volatility only matters in the short term. It only matters in the short term. So I'm very confident that that the price will go up over time. Very, very confident. So I'm not only betting my life savings in terms of money. I'm betting my time. Like I'm betting my youth. Like I'm studying it, and I keep looking for reasons I'm wrong. And it's very, very hard to find them. Like I would rather find out I'm wrong from you guys, from people watching this who like share something in the comments and say like, hey, have you thought about this? Like, are you overlooking this or that? I'd rather you tell me and I think, wow, that's a really great point. You know what? Maybe I should kind of ease off the whole Bitcoin thing. I'd rather learn that way than learn the hard way of like, okay, Bitcoin drops to zero because whatever, something happens in the world and then there goes everything. That would be painful. I don't really want that pain. But I'm open to it. I mean, I'm open to it because I think the odds of it happening are extremely small. And the odds of Bitcoin growing and succeeding are pretty high. I mean, pretty high. Like in my mind, it's kind of a foregone conclusion. It's very, very difficult for me to imagine a scenario that stops Bitcoin. Slows it? Of course. There'll be hundreds of scenarios that slow Bitcoin. I don't care. I don't care if it's slow. But to stop it completely, I can't imagine. I mean, it's so difficult. Even like an EMP, like that takes out half the world, wouldn't knock out Bitcoin. I mean, you knock out 100 countries, but you wouldn't knock out Bitcoin. It's just really hard to imagine. So I am not that worried about volatility. Patience, young Padawan. Okay. All right, guys, that's all the questions I have for today, and we are just about at an hour. So if there's nothing else in the chat, then I will wrap it up. Guys, thank you for watching. I really, really appreciate it. I am looking to do this possibly monthly moving forward. I'm thinking about the second Saturday of every month starting in the new year. So this month it was actually the third Saturday, but I'm thinking about doing it the second Saturday every month. So stay tuned. Yeah, I'm curious to hear what you guys think in the comments. Let me know. Ask me more questions. Give me feedback. And yeah, I guess I'll see you guys in my weekly videos.